Hey, Shalom Akim. First and foremost, call Allah Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushua, Ba'ashim Bash. And of course, double honors once again go out to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who continue through the Holy Spirit, who teaches us truth, whereby giving us this knowledge and wisdom, where we in turn try to deliver it to you, right, in the hopes of waking up the remaining hopefully elect, all right? Because none of us are sure yet. We're just out here doing the work, working for that penny, all right? I was laughing earlier because this video I'm about to show you is from the Roland Martin Daily Digital Show. And as everyone should know by now, they let Bill Cosby out. And the reason I was laughing because, oh man, I imagine these feminazis are pissed. They just knew. Yes, we got him. All right. Another mark. Another trophy. Well, I was thinking the way the reason I was laughing, I was thinking about the moment a lot of them heard this, it'd be like, what was that Dave Chappelle skit, that character, Clayton, is it Bixby? Bixby? Well, he thought he was a white supremacist. And, he tried to tell him he was a black man. He wouldn't go for it. So at a certain point, he addressed an audience, and he got so hyped that, because everybody thought he was, a white man. But when he revealed himself, a few of the supremacists in the audience, their heads exploded. And I'm like, that's what I was picturing, these feminazis, But, and some others. But this video isn't about Bill Cosby per se, but it's this wicked ass system. And as you're going to hear in this video, he was not supposed to do a day in jail. They had made an agreement with a prior prosecutor, and the courts were supposed to uphold that. But this goes to show you that you can't, why you would do it anyway, but you can't put faith in this wicked ass system, because after all, we are the prey, all right, as Israelites. So let's go ahead and roll this. Wow, now that I said that, let's get these scriptures first. This is going to be, hold on, because whatever happened in the past with him, getting his fame, whatever have you, at the end of the day, the devil's coming for payment, all right? Your payment's due. This is Isaiah 28:15. It says, because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us. For we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood that we hid ourselves. All up in there, and rubbing elbows with the Hollywood elite and others who really hated you, but they played along. All right. Let's get, since I'm already here, let's go to Isaiah 30:1. It says, Judah warned against Egyptian alliance. But what do we do? This is Isaiah 30:1. It says, woe to the rebellious children, Israelites, saith the Most High Yahweh, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. This is Jake. Whether you reach the pinnacle of so-called society here, or in the world in general, or you're a peasant, all right? At both ends of the spectrum and in between, Jake does not know their true power. They don't even know that they're Israelites. That's what we're trying to make our people aware of, who they really are. That in and of itself is power. All right? And this man, this demon, this devil, so-called white man who is of the nation of Edom in the Bible, descendants of Jacob's brother Esau, he's done everything in his power to keep you from realizing that. When you bring a people over, enslaved, have taken everything from them, and then through several generations you strip what they knew, and you put in them what you want, all right? But by some miracle, through it all, they begin to realize who they are. And no matter, just like in ancient Egypt, where they oppressed us with rigor, what do? We multiply. Don't you think, if I was the oppressor, like, wait a minute, I've done all this? And in the case of child slavery, when they supposedly let us go, the Emancipation Proclamation, we all know that's BS. With the initiation of the prison industrial complex being formed, Jim Crow, all of that. In most cases, it only took one generation for us to, through the help of the Most High Yahweh Bashim Shah, of course, whether our people were aware of it or not. In most cases, it was just one generation to where Jake got on their feet. You don't think that's scary to the enemy? So through all this, the majority of our people just refuse to do right. This is verse 2. It says, "That walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt." All right? "Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion." All right, and this is so on point for the day, because not only with this situation here, but think about it, with the jab, so many Jakes are just lining up to get this, and they've got all kinds of incentives. And Jake is not thinking, well, why are they going through all this trouble? Just to make that point. But here, you put so much faith in your enemy, in your enemy's structure, its framework, the system, which has always been against us. And this is a man with means meaning he's got the money. He's got, or had, the connections. And still. So how about when this devil finally, he is now, but it's more of a behind the scenes kind of thing. What happens when he comes at us directly? All they're waiting for is that right moment. All right, that's scripture. We're going to be led before the governors and as such. All right, because what are we doing? We're telling people who this piece of shit really is, biblically, and that he's no good. He is the wicked that the Bible talks about in the flesh. All right, and people are waking up to that fact. So he's always had part of his power. I'm talking about the elites who know what's going on, was part of that power was their secrecy. Part of that power lied in that secrecy. It's no longer the case. So let's go ahead and roll this video. Like I said, the shadow of Egypt, your confusion, right? Because This is what our people did. Let's go to 36 real quick. I didn't want to take too long on this. This is Isaiah chapter 36, verse 6. It says, Lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt, whereon if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh king of Egypt to all that trust in him. That's all the majority of Jake know. You're born, all right, you're raised to a certain age, you start school, then you're primed to what? It's that endless cycle, all right, generation after generation of bullshit being installed, being you learning, all right, lies, all right. Now that's coming to an end because the elites have realized that it's run its course. So they've got to change shit up. And that change is going to coincide with the New World Order. Right? They've got to change. The money system is the big thing. That's going to tighten the noose, so to speak. It's all about control. These masks that you're wearing has nothing to do with the virus. It's about control. I want to know who's going to do what I say. To the letter, preferably. So what's ending up is you're going to have to make a choice eventually. Who's your God? Is it going to be the nation of Edom, the so-called white man, the elites thereof? Or is it going to be the Most High? Yahweh, his son Yahweh Shai. All right, so let's go ahead and roll this footage, and it's going to describe to you this wicked shit that they did to ensnare this man. Like I said, this is not about Bill Cosby. All right? It ain't about him, per se. Yes, this is the case he's involved in. All right, but this is exposing this wicked system for what it is. And how you shouldn't put any faith in it. Here we go.
Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Folks, breaking news out of Pennsylvania. Well, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court today threw out the conviction of comedian Bill Cosby. 3 years ago, he was convicted of assault, and he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. Well, they ruled today that the decision to prosecute him was wrong. Why? Because he previously, with another prosecutor, agreed not to pursue criminal charges against him in exchange for him speaking in a civil deposition, in a civil trial. What that meant was that in that particular civil deposition, he could not declare his Fifth Amendment rights to self-incrimination. The court ruled today that as a result of that agreement not to prosecute him, which then caused him to give up those rights, that was wrong, and that the new prosecutor who campaigned specifically that he would prosecute Bill Cosby, he should have honored that previous commitment. It was a shocking turn of events. Not only the decision comes down today, Bill Cosby this afternoon was freed from prison. What I want to do right now is I want to bring up our panel. First and foremost, Monique Presley, crisis manager and lawyer, A. Scott Bolden, of course, a former head of the National Bar Association Political Action Committee. I want to talk with them first. Monique, I'll start with you. Was today's decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturning lower court's ruling, was it a shock to you? You previously represented Bill Cosby in this particular case. You were one of several lawyers, but your thoughts on today's decision by the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court?
They did the right thing. And what I said on December 31st, 2015 is the same thing that I have to say today, and that the Supreme Court ultimately said. When a prosecutor makes a promise and a defendant or potential defendant relies on the promise to his own detriment, that cannot stand. The original prosecutor, made a promise, declined to prosecute, and induced the testimony of Mr. Cosby in a civil case because of that assurance. But for that, he would have had the opportunity, and certainly the lawyers then would have advised him to plead the fifth. He would have remained silent because there was the potential out there for a criminal charge in that case. Bruce Castor's decision eliminated that as a possibility, supposedly. And then you fast forward 12 years to a new prosecutor who somehow decides that if the person who's sitting in the seat of government wants to do something different because the times call for something different, or because it's an election season and he wants to win, then he doesn't have to honor what a prior prosecutor promised and what a potential defendant relied upon. It was absurd from the outset and should not have occurred. And so what the Supreme Court said about it is that that cannot happen, that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has to adhere to the promises of its officers where its citizens have relied on those promises. And that's what we saw today.
There's been a lot of people who have been commenting, a lot of people who have been saying this is an outrage, that Bill Cosby should not have been free from prison. Scott Bolden, this was a 79-page decision rendered by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Your judgment on today's decision. Scott, we have no audio, so please unmute yourself.
Sorry. It was the law, and the Supreme Court, in a 79-page decision, which means they were very intentional about this, said, regardless of what you think about Bill Cosby and the 5 or 6 women or the dozens of women who he allegedly was wrongfully acted with, the bottom line is they tricked him into giving up his Fifth Amendment and then tried him years later that violated his due process rights. I agree with Monique. It's pretty standard fare. I have a Fifth Amendment right. If I cut a deal to give it up with a prosecutor, another prosecutor 12 years later can't come up and say, I'm not going to honor that deal. The other thing to remember, Roland, about this is that the Supreme Court could have taken a slightly different position. I believe the other issue pending before the court, vis-a-vis whether the probative value of those other women being led into the second trial outweighed the prejudicial effect. I think the court would have ruled that it was too prejudicial. And had they ruled on that second issue, first issue was the violation of the due process. Had they ruled on the second issue versus the first issue, they could have sent it back down to be retried. But instead, they intentionally said, we're going to deal with the due process piece, because if he violated his due process rights and you tricked him into giving up his Fifth Amendment and you prosecuted him, then the other women and how the trial went are moot and don't really matter. And so they chose to attack this case like that, so that, one, they vacated the judgment, cannot be retried, and then they discharged him. Case over, bottom line. And he's at home at 79 years old, and there are a lot of people who disagree with the court's decision, but the law doesn't serve one side or the other. It just serves the law and the judicial system, and this was the right thing to do. It was the right legal decision to make, and the rest of it on politics and perceptions, people can have their opinions, but this was the right call by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania.
Well, first, Cosby is 83, so I'm sure he would appreciate you shaving 4 years off of his age there, Scott.
He's cute too.
He's 83 years old. But Monique, to Scott's point about how the law works regardless of who you are, the critics say Bill Cosby got a sweetheart deal by this prosecutor, Bruce Castor, choosing not to pursue charges. In reading the 79-page document from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, they laid out where he stated that he did not believe that he could actually get a conviction because of inconsistencies in Andrea Constant's testimony, also no physical evidence and the time gap between it, and that he gave many statements where he also said that he wanted to be some measure of justice, which as a result of this decision required Bill Cosby to have to answer all questions during this civil case. There were 4 depositions he sat for during the civil case, and then at one point he did answer some questions. They went to the court, and the court said, yes, as a result of the previous agreement, you have to answer these questions. And there are a lot of people out there who are saying that this decision vindicated Bill Cosby, or that Bill Cosby was declared innocent. That's actually not what this decision rendered actually says, correct?
No, it doesn't have to say that. It says that he shouldn't be charged in the first place. It says wash it all away as if the trial never happened. Somebody in this country is still innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. You can't be proven guilty on something you never should have been charged with in the first place. So people can say in language whatever they want, whatever way they want, but I see a lot of people, even legal folks, calling this a technicality. To me, again, absurd. How is someone inducing you to waive essentially your Fifth Amendment right to not be incriminated against, and that be called a technicality when it is the direct cause of things that happen later? So anyone who doesn't think that they have a liberty interest at stake will answer questions that any lawyer would first say, don't do it, if they thought that there was any possibility of a trial. So what I think about now is that people who understand the law and respect it should replace Mr. Cosby with any given defendant. Replace him with your son, with your husband, with your brother. We try one case at a time, and the obligation in the justice system is to do it when it's right to do it. So imagine your family member being made a promise that they relied on by the government. That promise is supposed to stand. We need justice to apply the same for every single person in every single case, and that's to administer it fairly.
To that particular point there, Scott, as I went through this ruling, this 79-page ruling, that was the one thing that the court kept coming back to. They kept coming back to saying the fact that Bruce Castor, as a prosecutor, carries a lot of power, a lot of weight, and that his decision had to be respected. That once once a defendant gets this word, and even though there were claims that, well, it was not actually written down or it wasn't actually formalized, they concluded that as an agent of the court, if you will, that carries a lot of weight when he says we are not going to prosecute you criminally. Therefore, as a part of this agreement, you must testify civilly. What they're saying is that, look, in other words, what Monique said, that frankly, Bill Cosby did not have that agreement. He's not speaking truthfully or answering all questions in the civil. So if Bill Cosby didn't get that agreement, we actually would not have any testimony of him actually speaking on the record about quaaludes and sex and drinks, things along those lines.
And it was an interesting deal. I mean, we've been at this a long time, Monique and I. I've never seen a prosecutor do this type of deal. But they did the deal, and the court recognized that. But remember why Castor did it this way. He could not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. He could not, and he announced he couldn't, and that he was going to do this deal where he was going to allow to say he will never be prosecuted or not prosecuted. And in exchange for that, he will give civil testimony, and ultimately that case settled for $3 or $4 million. It didn't have to be in writing. I'm an officer of the court. Castor was an officer of the Pennsylvania State Court and the prosecutor. That does carry weight. A deal's a deal, as I've been saying on social media, and you can't unwind the deal because you don't like the discretion of that prosecutor. And so here, it's even more egregious because in exchange for him giving up his Fifth Amendment, he agreed to testify. And that's what Castor wanted because there was going to be a civil settlement. Prosecutors cut deals like this all the time vis-a-vis, they know a civil case is out there. Here, Castor structured this deal to get him to give up his Fifth Amendment. He gave it up because Castor knew he couldn't prosecute him criminally because what? There wasn't enough evidence. So on the first trial, there wasn't enough evidence. And then the second trial, they brought in these other prior bad acts, allegedly, these other women. They let in 5 or 6, and then you get the conviction. That's not due process. That's not fundamental fairness. And that's just a bad jury verdict based on what's underlying all of this.
And there were a lot of people, obviously, Monique, who were also critical of the fact that that deposition that was taken, he sat for four different sessions. A deposition was leaked or inadvertently exposed publicly, which then put it in the public record. If that doesn't happen, then publicly we don't have even that in the trial, correct?
I don't know. Or maybe I know things I can't say. But here's my point on this.
First of all, for anybody who's paying attention, even though she is formally Bill Cosby's attorney, the attorney-client privilege requirement still stands. So that's why there are some things she cannot talk about. Go ahead.
Right. And other things that I just will not talk about because I think there just is an obligation of confidentiality. So anything that I'm commenting is publicly available. It's things I said publicly then, things that were in trial, or things that others have already commented on publicly. To Scott's point, I think it's really important that this Supreme Court had the option to reverse and remand, had the option on the other issue, and I think they would have. I think that the decision by the judge in one trial to not let in that testimony, and then when it hangs, comes back in the second trial and basically opens a barnyard door and says, "Come one, come all, tell your story." That made the difference in the trial, and the Supreme Court likely would have found that, but they decided instead, no. We are taking it all the way to the beginning, before the first trial, when there were charges on December 30th, 2015. That is the decision that was wrong. And so it's not a decision by Castor that was wrong in making the deal. Prosecutors have all the discretion in the world. It was the decision by Steele to not honor it that was violative of Mr. Cosby's rights. If you just think about the way prosecutors come up with plea agreements and then the court ratifies those agreements, what if the prosecutor 10 years later decides the day before your little brother is supposed to get out of prison on a deal that was 10 out of a 10 to 20 possibility? We shouldn't have offered that. That's too low. We think he did some other things. We can't get him for the other things, so we're going to stack on more time here. Are you kidding me? No, that cannot be the way that our justice system works.
That's exactly what these devils do. All right. You gotta remember, we're behind enemy lines here. We're from the time that we were brought over here, the first slave ship, we have been at war. All right. This is clearly they had it in for this man. Like I said, the Feminazis, they were celebrating. Yes, we get them. This is Psalms 40 and 4. The heading says, "The Most High sustains his servant." All right. But this too is going to highlight what we, being out here on the highways and byways, trying to wake our people up, what's coming towards and for us. All right. Remember, the servant is not greater than his master. All right. What Yahushua went through. Hey, like I said at the beginning, this is not about Bill Cosby. This is the system that we're up against. All right. Now, this is a man, like I said, that had the means. He had the money. He had the power. He had the connections. And still, this is Psalms 40 and 4. Blessed is that man that maketh the Most High Yahweh his trust, not the machinations of the Edomites, the so-called white man, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. All right, staying in Psalms, let's go to Psalms. This is Psalms 118 and 8. It is better to trust in the Most High Yahweh than to put confidence in man. no matter how much money you have or he has. All right, those are temporal things. All right, verse 9: it is better to trust in the Most High Yahweh than to put confidence in princes. All right, or anyone else. That's princes, but anyone else that's in a high position. All right, staying in Psalms. This is Psalms 146, verse 3. The Most High Yahweh, an abundant helper. Put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. That Son of Man is not talking about Yahweh Shai, it's talking about man in general. All right. Job chapter 19, verse 9, it says, He hath stripped me of my glory and taken the crown from my head. And this indeed was an all-out assault. All right. I mean, they went after him with both barrels. Like I said, they prejudiced the jury and everyone else by having those demons paraded in front of, everybody. All right. They knew what they were doing. Like I said, he was not supposed to spend one day in jail, but at the end of the day, that was his judgment. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna end it right there. That's pretty much the point I was trying to make. How people put too much confidence in this wicked ass society. All right. And a lot of them to this day aren't aware that this shit is getting ready to, there's some serious shit getting ready to kick off here. They are so focused on this BS magic virus and all the things that are surrounding it, not realizing that's just a distraction. They're not paying attention to the things that they should be paying attention to. All right, and they think they're free now. All right, it's over and all this. Oh no, 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 no. That's just a setup. All right. So yeah, with that, once again, they let Cosby out, overturn the conviction. You can just see these feminazis walking up and down the street. They are pissed. Beautiful. Meanwhile, Harvey Weinstein still locked up. All right. So with that, hey, shalom, shalom.